The Galactic Slave Exchange on Station 9 was the biggest market in all the known space sectors. It was a huge place that spread across many levels of the station. Here, the defeated races from 100 different wars found themselves turned into things to be bought and sold. Bright neon signs floated in the air, showing pictures of living beings for sale in many different languages. The air was filled with the quiet sadness of those who had once ruled over entire star systems. Danny Cole stood at the main entrance of this terrible place. His old leather jacket looked strange among the smooth and shiny clothes that the alien traders wore. He was 34 years old, a man from Earth who made his living by finding and selling old ship parts and technology that others had left behind in space. 3 years ago, he had gotten lucky. He found an abandoned cruiser from the hegemony floating dead in space. That discovery had made him rich. Now he traveled through the frontier sectors of the galaxy, buying old technology and sometimes hearing crew members from the more desperate places he visited. He had not come to this station to buy people. That was not something Danny had ever planned to do. But fate, as it often did in the cold emptiness of space, had different plans for him. A loud noise near Platform 12 caught his attention. A crowd of different alien species had gathered around a blue glowing wall of energy. This wall was a containment field meant to keep prisoners inside. Behind this wall stood 7 figures in a neat line. Even though they wore chains on their wrists and ankles, the way they stood spoke of military training. Their backs were straight. Their heads were held high. They looked like soldiers, not slaves. Danny moved closer to get a better look. The beings behind the containment field had skin that was a deep purple color, like the color of a bruise, but somehow beautiful. Their skin was marked with silver lines and shapes that formed patterns. Danny recognized these marks. They were campaign scars given to warriors who had survived many battles. Their eyes were the strangest thing about them. Each eye had 3 pupils arranged in a triangle shape, and these eyes moved constantly, tracking every person in the crowd with the sharp awareness of hunters. Danny felt his breath catch in his throat. He knew what these beings were. They were the warrior caste of the Dominion of, an empire that had recently fallen. These were not ordinary aliens. These were some of the most feared fighters in the entire galaxy. Just 6 months ago, they had been the terror of 12 star systems. Their space fleets had crushed rebellions on dozens of worlds. They had conquered planets and forced entire species into slavery. They had held the Dominion together through nothing but their strength and their willingness to use violence. When the ruling class of the Dominion gave an order, they carried it out without question. They were weapons in the shape of people. Then the Dominion had made a terrible mistake. The rulers of the Dominion had decided to challenge the Terran Confederation over mining rights in a place called the Epsilon Cluster. The Dominion believed that humans were weak. They thought that a young species that had only been traveling among the stars for a few hundred years could not possibly stand against an empire that had ruled for thousands of years. They were wronged. The war lasted 11 weeks. The human response had been fast, powerful, and completely devastating. The Confederation fleet had torn apart the Dominion Navy in 3 major battles. Each battle was more one-sided than the one before. For all their skill and ferocity, had never faced an enemy like humanity. Humans did not fight for glory or honor. They fought to win. They used tactics that they had never seen before. They sacrificed ships and sometimes even lives to achieve strategic goals. They fought with a cold calculation that seemed almost cruel. In 11 weeks, an empire that had lasted for was destroyed. Now the Dominion was gone. Its ruling houses had either run away to hide in distant sectors or had been caught and executed for their crimes against humanity. The great fleets were scattered or destroyed. The conquered worlds were being freed one by one. And they who had been bred for war and trained for nothing else found themselves without anyone to serve. They had no purpose. They had no protection under galactic law, and they had no rights. Many of them had ended up here, in slave markets like this one. Danny watched as potential buyers walked around the containment field, examining the like they were livestock. A fat merchant with 6 arms poked one of the warriors with a scanning device. A thin slaver with pale gray skin circled the group slowly, probably calculating how much money he could make by selling them to underground fighting arenas. None of them reacted to this treatment. They stood perfectly still, their faces showing nothing. But Danny could see the tension in their muscles. He could see the way their hands twitched slightly, as if they wanted to grab the people touching them and break their necks. They were warriors being treated like cattle, and every moment of it was torture for them. One of them caught Danny's eye. This one was smaller than the others, though still tall by human standards. She was female, Danny thought, though it was hard to tell with alien species sometimes. She had more silver scarring on her skin than any of her companions. The patterns covered her arms, her neck, and part of her face. Each line represented a battle survived, a campaign completed. This one had seen more combat than all the others combined. Her three-pupiled eyes locked onto Danny with an intensity that made him want to step back. But he held his ground. He had dealt with dangerous people before. You did not survive long in the salvage business if you showed fear. Then she did something that made everyone in the crowd gasp. She knelt. Her movement was smooth and controlled, like everything she did. She lowered herself to one knee, bowed her head, and placed her right fist over her left shoulder in what was clearly a formal gesture. The others stiffened in obvious shock. Several of them turned their heads slightly to look at her, and Danny could see the confusion on their alien faces. One of them even took a small step toward her, as if to stop her or pull her back up. Danny did not understand what was happening, but the reaction of the crowd told him it was significant. The merchant had stopped his prodding. The slaver had frozen mid-step. Other buyers who had been walking past stopped to stare. A murmur ran through the crowd. Danny heard fragments of conversation in several languages. His translator implant struggled to keep up, but he caught words like impossible and unheard of, and what is she doing? An older alien near Danny, a wrinkled creature with blue skin and kind eyes, leaned toward him. Kneeling, the alien whispered. In culture, kneeling is the ultimate submission. It is reserved only for acknowledging absolute defeat to a worthy enemy, for a warrior of her rank to kneel before a potential buyer. The alien shook his head. This has never happened, never in all the centuries of their existence. The woman spoke. Her voice was not loud, but it carried across the platform with perfect clarity. Danny's translator implant hummed as it converted her words into English. Human, she said. I am formerly Shield Commander of the 7th Assault Legion of the Dominion. The warriors you see behind me served under my command for many years. Together we have fought in 37 campaigns. We have conquered 11 worlds. We have killed thousands. She paused, and Danny felt the weight of that pause. She was confessing, he realized. She was admitting to terrible things. We have killed your kind, continued. We have burned your colonies. We have done terrible things in service to masters who deserved no loyalty. When the Dominion ordered us to attack Meridian Colony, we obeyed. When they ordered us to leave no survivors, we obeyed. We were weapons, and weapons do not question the hands that wield them. Danny felt his stomach twist. Meridian Colony. He knew that name. Everyone in the Confederation knew that name. It was one of the worst atrocities of the war. Over 40,000 humans had died there, including nearly 10,000 children. The colony had been a peaceful settlement of farmers and scientists. They had no military value. They had no strategic importance. The Dominion had ordered them destroyed simply to send a message to humanity. And this woman had been part of that. Part of Danny wanted to turn and walk away. Part of him wanted to spit at her feet and leave her to whatever fate awaited her in this horrible place. She deserved it. She deserved worse than whatever the fighting pits or the pleasure houses would do to her. But another part of Danny remembered something his grandfather used to say. His grandfather had fought in one of Earth's last great wars, back before humanity had reached the stars. He had killed men and watched his friends die, and he had come home with scars on his body and deeper scars on his soul. Every enemy, his grandfather had said, is someone's son or daughter. Every soldier on the other side has a mother who cries for them. That does not mean you should not fight. Sometimes you must fight. But when the fighting is over, you have a choice. You can hold on to your hate forever and let it poison everything good in your life, or you can find a way to move forward. The ones who find a way to move forward, they are the strong ones. The ones who cannot let go, they are the real casualties of war, even if they survived the battles. Danny stayed where he was. He listened. "The dominion that commanded us is dead," said. "The masters we served have been destroyed by your people, and we do not mourn them. We have had time to think in the months since our capture. We have had time to examine our lives and our choices, and we have come to understand something that we were never taught during our training." She raised her head slightly, enough to meet Danny's eyes. The three pupils in each of her eyes were focused on him with complete attention. "We were told that our purpose was war. We were told that our genes had been shaped over hundreds of generations to create the perfect soldiers. We were told that nothing mattered except battle, except victory, except obedience. But that was a lie. The ruling class of the Dominion did not create us to fulfill some noble purpose. They created us to be tools, weapons, things to be used and discarded." Her voice remained steady, but Danny could hear something beneath the surface. Not anger, something sadder than anger. "We know what awaits us here in this market," she continued. "We have seen others of our kind purchased. The fighting pits, where we will be made to kill each other for the entertainment of those who bet on our blood. The pleasure houses, where our bodies will be used in ways I will not describe. The labor camps, where we will work until our bodies break and then be thrown away like garbage. This is the fate of the now. This is what we have earned through our service to evil masters." She paused again. When she spoke next, her voice was quieter. "But we have studied your kind since the war. In the cells where they kept us, we had access to information networks. We read about humanity, we learned about your history, and we discovered something that surprised us." "Your species is young," said. "You have been traveling among the stars for only a few hundred years. In the long history of the galaxy, you are children, and yet you have already built something that older races never achieved. You have built a civilization that changes, that grows, that learns from its mistakes. We read about your wars. You have had many. Your history is written in blood just like ours. But after your wars, you do something strange. You rebuild. You forgive. You turn enemies into allies. You have done this again and again throughout your history. Nations that tried to destroy each other became partners. Peoples who hated each other for generations found ways to live together in peace." She lowered her head again. "We know that we have no right to ask anything of your kind. We have done terrible things to humanity. The blood of Meridian is on our hands, and nothing can wash it away. But we are asking anyway because we have nowhere else to turn. Please purchase us, human." The words hung in the air. Danny heard several people in the crowd laugh. Others made sounds of disgust, but continued as if she had not heard them. "Not as slaves," she said. "Not as property, but as those who are seeking redemption. We do not ask you to forgive us. Forgiveness is something we must earn if we can earn it at all. We ask only for a chance. Give us a purpose that is worthy of the skills we possess. Let us use our abilities for something good instead of something evil. Let us serve a master who fights for something beyond mere conquest and cruelty. We will give you our absolute loyalty. We will give you our lives if necessary. We will serve without reservation and without complaint." She lifted her head one final time, and Danny saw something in her three-pupiled eyes that he had never expected to see in a warrior. "Hope. This is not a plea born of weakness," said. "We are not broken. We are not begging because we fear pain or death. We have faced both many times, and we do not fear them now. This is a plea born of understanding. We were formidable once. Under proper guidance, we can be formidable again. But this time, we wish to be formidable in service to something better than what we were." She fell silent. The crowd was completely quiet now. Even the merchants and slavers had stopped moving. Danny stood frozen as the weight of the moment pressed down on him. He looked at, kneeling behind the containment field. He looked at the other six, standing at attention with their campaign scars and their warrior postures and their eyes that had seen more death than most people could imagine. He thought about his ship, the Resilience. Right now, it was floating in a docking bay on the other side of the station, running with a skeleton crew that was barely enough to keep it operational. He had been turning down contracts for months because he did not have enough people to handle the dangerous salvage operations that paid the best money. He thought about the pirates who had been harassing independent contractors in the frontier sectors. The Terran Confederation Navy was stretched thin, trying to patrol the territory of the fallen Dominion while also protecting human space. Ships like his were vulnerable to attack, and there was not much help available if trouble found them. He thought about all the things he could do with a crew of trained warriors, the contracts he could take, the places he could go, the safety he would have in dangerous space. But those were practical thoughts, and Danny knew that this moment was about something more than practicality. He thought about his grandfather, about forgiveness and second chances, about the stubborn human belief that no one was beyond redemption if they genuinely wanted to change. He thought about what it would mean if he walked away. These would be sold to someone else. They would end up in the fighting pits or worse, and they would die as they had lived, as weapons in the hands of cruel masters. Was that justice? Was that what the dead of Meridian Colony would want? Danny did not know. He was not wise enough to answer questions like that. But he knew what his gut was telling him, and his gut had kept him alive for 34 years in a dangerous galaxy. "What is the asking price?" Danny heard himself say. The auctioneer, a spindly creature with too many joints and a high-pitched voice, seemed surprised to be addressed. He consulted a glowing that floated near his head. "For the lot," the auctioneer asked. 70,000 galactic credits. They are damaged goods, you understand. The warrior caste has limited utility outside of combat applications. Most buyers prefer the more." He searched for a word. "Tractable races." Danny had twice that amount in his ship's account. The salvage from the hegemony cruiser had been generous, and he had been careful with his money over the past 3 years. He had been saving for something, though he had never been sure what. Maybe this was it. "I will take them," Danny said. The crowd reacted immediately. Several people started talking at once. The merchant with 6 arms pushed forward, waving his scanner. "I will double whatever he offers," they shouted. "Triple, these specimens are perfect for my collection. I have been looking for warriors for years. Name your price, human." Danny turned to look at the alien was fat and soft, the kind of creature who had never fought for anything in his life. His collection, Danny knew, would be a private zoo where rare and dangerous species were kept for the amusement of the wealthy. They would be drugged and displayed like animals, shown off to his friends at parties. "Not interested in your money," Danny said flatly. "You are making a mistake," they insisted. "These creatures are dangerous. They are bred for killing. They have no other skills, no other value. What could a salvage contractor possibly want with warriors?" "That is my business," Danny replied. He turned away from and stepped toward the containment field. The other had not moved from their positions, but Danny could see the tension in their bodies. They were watching him approach with their 3-pupiled eyes, and he could tell they were not sure what to make of him. Only remained kneeling, her head still bowed. Danny stopped just outside the containment field. The blue energy hummed softly, close enough that he could feel a faint tingling on his skin. "Stand up," he said to. She lifted her head, meeting his eyes. For a moment, she did not move. "If you are going to serve on my ship," Danny continued, "you will stand as crew, not kneel as property. I did not buy slaves, I hired warriors. There is a difference. Now stand up." Rose slowly. Her movement was fluid and controlled, the product of a lifetime of physical training. As she straightened to her full height, Danny realized that she was taller than him by several inches. Her presence was impressive, even in chains. The other exchanged glances. Danny could not read their alien expressions, but he sensed surprise, confusion, and perhaps a small amount of hope. "You will not regret this decision, human," said. "My name is Danny, Danny Cole, use it." He turned to look at all 7 of the. "That goes for all of you. On my ship, we use names, not titles. We work together as a team, not as masters and servants. If you have a problem with that, speak up now." None of them spoke. "Good," Danny turned back to the auctioneer. "Process the transaction. I want them released within the hour." Of course," the auctioneer said, his many-jointed fingers flying across his. 70,000 credits transferring now. The containment field will be lowered as soon as the funds clear. And the chains." "Remove them," Danny said. "All of them." The auctioneer hesitated. Sir, I must advise against that. Warriors are extremely dangerous. The chains are for your protection as much as anyone else's, until you have them properly secured on your vessel. Remove them, Danny repeated. Now. The auctioneer looked at Danny for a long moment, then shrugged. As you wish. It is your funeral, as you humans say. The transfer completed, and the containment field flickered and disappeared. A moment later, the chains on the wrists and ankles clicked open and fell to the ground with a metallic clatter. The 7 warriors stood free for the first time in months. Danny watched them carefully, but he did not reach for the small pistol at his belt. If they wanted to kill him, he would not be able to stop them anyway. 7 trained against 1 human salvage contractor would not even be a fight. But they did not attack. They did not run. They simply stood there, rubbing their wrists where the chains had been, looking at Danny with expressions that might have been gratitude. Stepped forward until she was standing directly in front of Danny. Up close, he could see the individual silver lines on her skin more clearly. Each one was a scar, he realized, but not from wounds. They were ritual markings, burned into the skin with some kind of heated tool. Each mark represented something specific in culture, though Danny did not know enough to interpret them. You have taken a great risk, said. You know what we are, you know what we have done, and yet you freed us without any guarantee that we will honor our words. That is right, Danny agreed. Why? It was a simple question, but Danny found that he did not have a simple answer. He thought about it for a moment before responding. Because I believe in second chances, he said finally. And because I think people deserve to be judged by what they choose to do, not just by what they have done. You chose to kneel. You chose to ask for redemption instead of accepting whatever fate this place had for you. That tells me something about who you are now, even if it does not erase who you were before. Studied him with her strange eyes. Danny had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing more than just his face. You are either very wise or very foolish, she said at last. Probably both, Danny admitted. But mostly just stubborn. Now come on, we have a ship to get to, and I need to introduce you to the rest of the crew. He turned and started walking toward the station's docking bays. After a moment, he heard footsteps behind him as the 7 fell into formation at his back. The crowd parted to let them pass. Danny saw fear on many faces, disgust on others. A few looked at him with something like respect, though whether they respected his courage or his stupidity, he could not tell. He did not care. He had made his choice. Now he would live with the consequences, whatever they might be. The walk from the slave market to the docking bays took about 20 minutes. Danny used the time to send a message ahead to his ship, warning the crew about their new arrivals. He kept the message brief. There was no way to explain this properly in a text communication. They would just have to see for themselves. The Resilience was waiting for them in Bay 47. She was not a beautiful ship. Her hull was covered in patches and repairs from years of hard use. Her paint was faded and scratched. Her design was decades out of date, a boxy cargo hauler that had been modified so many times she barely resembled her original configuration. But she was fast, she was tough, and she was home. Danny stopped at the base of the boarding ramp and turned to face the... This is my ship, he said. The Resilience. She is not much to look at, but she has got me through some difficult situations. Treat her with respect and we will get along fine. Looked up at the ship. Danny could not read her expression, but she seemed to be studying every detail of the vessel. A modified class cargo hauler, she said. Reinforced hull plating, upgraded engine array, additional weapon mounts. You have invested significant resources in making this ship combat capable. Danny blinked. You can tell all that just from looking at the outside. I was trained to analyze enemy vessels, replied. Identifying strengths and weaknesses is an essential skill for a shield commander. Your ship is better protected than it appears. The modifications are subtle, designed to make it look like a standard cargo hauler while hiding its true capabilities. Clever. Thanks, Danny said. I did most of the work myself. Come on, let us go inside. He led them up the ramp and into the ship's main cargo bay. The space was cluttered with salvage from recent jobs, crates and containers stacked against the walls in organized chaos that only Danny fully understood. Overhead lights flickered on automatically as they entered, casting harsh white illumination over everything. 4 people were waiting for them. Sandra Hayes stood at the front, her arms crossed over her chest. She was a thin woman in her early 30s, with short brown hair and tired eyes. She was the Resilience's pilot, and she was very good at her job. She had left a boring desk job on Mars to see the galaxy, and she had found more excitement than she had bargained for. Behind her was Grant, the ship's engineer. He was a stocky man with thick arms and a bald head, older than the rest of the crew by at least a decade. He had an instinctive understanding of machines that bordered on mystical. Danny had seen him fix problems that should have required a full by using nothing but scrap parts and determination. Next to was the ship's medic. She was small and quiet, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had served as a corpsman in the Terran Confederation military during the war against the Dominion. She had seen terrible things, treated horrible wounds, and watched friends die in her arms. She did not talk about those experiences, but they lived behind her eyes. And finally, there was Pete, the youngest member of the crew. He was barely 22, a lanky kid from Luna Colony who had joined the Resilience because he wanted adventure. He handled general operations, which meant he did whatever needed doing at any given moment. He was not the most skilled member of the crew, but his enthusiasm made up for a lot. All 4 of them were staring at them with expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed hostility. "Danny," Sandra said slowly, "your message said you were bringing new crew members. It did not say anything about bringing the enemy." "Former enemy," Danny corrected. "The war is over, Sandra." "Tell that to the 40,000 people who died at Meridian," said quietly. Her voice was cold. Danny had expected this. He took a deep breath and addressed his crew. "I know this is not easy," he said. "I know that some of you have personal reasons to hate I am not asking you to forget the past, but I am asking you to give these people a chance." "Give them a chance?" Sandra repeated. "Danny, they are killers. That is literally what they were bred to do. What makes you think they would not slit our throats the moment we fall asleep?" "Because they asked me to buy them," Danny said. "They knelt in front of an entire crowd of people and begged for a chance at redemption. I have never seen a do anything like that before. Nobody has. That means something." "It means they are desperate," said. His voice was calmer than Sandra's, but no less skeptical. "Desperate people will say anything to survive." Danny nodded. "Maybe, but I do not think so." He stepped aside and gestured toward. She was a SHIELD commander in the 7th Assault Legion. She has more combat experience than all of us combined. And right now, she and her warriors are willing to serve on this ship and follow my orders." "Why?" Pete asked. It was the first thing he had said since they entered. "I mean, no offense, Danny, but why would a bunch of elite warriors want to work on a salvage ship?" Answered before Danny could. "Because we have no other options that do not involve degradation or death. Because we wish to find a new purpose after our old purpose was proven hollow. And because your captain was the only one in that entire market who looked at us and saw something other than merchandise." Stepped forward. Her hand was resting on the medical kit at her belt, though Danny doubted she could do much damage with it even if she wanted to. She walked up to and stood in front of her, looking up at the taller alien. "I was at Meridian," said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Not during the attack, after. I was part of the medical team that responded when the Confederation finally retook the colony. Do you know what we found there?" Met her gaze steadily. "Bodies, many bodies, including children." "Including children," repeated. "I spent 3 weeks cataloging the dead. I had to identify remains that were so badly burned I could barely tell if they were human. I had to find ways to tell families that their loved ones were gone, that there was not even enough left to bury properly." "I know," said. "I was there when it happened. I followed my orders. I did what I was commanded to do." She paused. "I am not asking for your forgiveness. I do not deserve it, but I am telling you that I understand what we did, and I carry the weight of it every day." The 2 women stood there, staring at each other. The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then turned and walked away. She did not say another word. She just disappeared through a doorway that led to the medical bay. Danny let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Sandra, Pete, I need you to give this a chance. I know it is hard, I know it seems crazy, but I have a feeling about this. I think these might be exactly what this ship needs. Was the first to respond. He uncrossed his arms and scratched his bald head thoughtfully. How are they with mechanical systems? Danny blinked at the unexpected question. I do not know why. Because if any of them can help me recalibrate the port stabilizers, I might be willing to overlook the whole galactic terror thing. Those stabilizers have been driving me crazy for months. Despite the tension in the room, Danny smiled. It was not acceptance, but it was a start. Do any of your people have experience with ship maintenance? Was an auxiliary engineer before he was transferred to combat duty, replied, gesturing toward one of the male. He is capable with most standard systems. Looked at the she had indicated. Was tall and heavily, with the muscular build of someone who had spent years in physical training. He did not look like an engineer. He looked like he could tear the engine apart with his bare hands. Can he take orders without killing anyone? Asked. He can follow instructions precisely, assured him. Good enough for me, said. He jerked his head toward the corridor. Come on, big guy, let us see what you can do with a plasma wrench. Looked at, who gave a small nod. Then he followed out of the cargo bay. It was a small thing, but it felt like a victory. Sandra still had her arms crossed, but her posture had relaxed slightly. What about the rest of them? What are they supposed to do? Danny had been thinking about this on the walk from the slave market. Security rotations, cargo handling, ship maintenance, whatever needs doing. We have been running short-handed for months. These 7 will give us enough people to take on bigger contracts, better jobs. And in a fight they do what they do best. Danny looked at. Your people will follow my orders, no matter what. We will follow your orders, confirmed. You are our captain now. Our loyalty belongs to you. Sandra made a skeptical sound. Easy to say, harder to prove. Then give us the opportunity to prove it, replied simply. Another silence fell. Danny could see Sandra thinking, weighing her options. She was not a cruel person, and she was not stupid. She understood the practical benefits of having warriors on the crew, but she also understood the risks. Finally, she sighed. Fine, but I want to be clear about something. She stepped closer too, though she had to look up to meet the alien's eyes. If any of you do anything to threaten this ship or this crew, I will personally fly us into the nearest star. Do you understand? I understand, said, and I respect your caution. It is wise to be careful with former enemies. Sandra held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded. Good. Danny, I will be on the bridge running system checks. Let me know when we are ready to leave this station. The sooner we are out of here, the better. She walked past without another word and disappeared into the corridor leading to the bridge. Pete watched her go, then looked at Danny uncertainly. What should I do, boss? Help them get settled, Danny said. Show them the crew quarters, the common areas, the mess hall. Make sure they know where everything is. And Pete. Yeah. Be polite. Pete looked at the 6 remaining warriors, all of whom towered over him. He swallowed nervously. Right, polite, I can do polite. He managed a weak smile. So, welcome to the Resilience. If you will follow me, I will show you around. The looked at, who nodded. Then they fell into step behind Pete as he led them toward the living quarters. Danny watched them go, noting how they automatically spread out into a defensive formation even while following the young human through a friendly ship. When they were gone, turned to Danny. Your crew does not trust us, she observed. Can you blame them? No, I would not trust us either in their position. She paused. But trust can be built over time. We will prove ourselves through our actions. I hope so, Danny said honestly. Because if this does not work out, I have just spent 70,000 credits on 7 very expensive problems. Features shifted in what Danny was beginning to recognize as a smile. It was subtle, just a slight change in the position of her facial muscles, but it transformed her from a stern warrior into something almost approachable. You are unusual for a human, she said. Most of your species either fears us or hates us. You seem to do neither. Oh, I am definitely scared, Danny admitted. I would be stupid not to be, but fear does not have to control your choices. You can be afraid of something and still decide to face it. That is a very human perspective. Maybe it is just a stubborn one. Danny gestured toward the corridor. Come on, I will show you to your quarters personally. You and I need to talk about what happens next. He led her through the ship, pointing out important locations as they walked. The Resilience was not large, but she was efficiently designed. Every space served multiple purposes, and there was very little wasted room. The mess hall is through there, Danny said, pointing to a door. We eat together when we can, though schedules do not always allow for it. The galley has basic cooking equipment and a decent selection of food. I do not know if your people can eat human food, but we can figure something out. Can digest most organic matter, said. Our digestive systems were engineered to process a wide variety of nutrients. We will adapt to whatever food is available. Good, that makes things easier. They continued walking. The medical bay is there, runs it, she is the one who was at Meridian, finished. I remember, she has reason to hate us more than most. She is a good person, Danny said. Give her time, she will come around eventually. And if she does not? Danny did not have an answer for that. He just kept walking. They reached the crew quarters, a section of the ship with small individual cabins arranged along a central corridor. Pete was just finishing his tour, explaining the shower schedule to them with nervous enthusiasm. And the water pressure is kind of weird sometimes, but you get used to it. Oh, and this button here controls the door lock, and this one adjusts the temperature, and if you need anything, just ask the ship's computer. Her name is, and she is mostly helpful as long as you do not ask her to do too many things at once. Thank you, Pete, Danny interrupted. I will take it from here. Pete looked relieved. Right, okay, I will be somewhere else. Welcome aboard, everyone. He practically fled down the corridor. Danny turned to face all seven. They had arranged themselves in a semicircle with at the center. Even in this casual setting, they maintained military formation instinctively. These will be your quarters, Danny said. They are not fancy, but they are private. Each cabin has a bed, storage space, and basic amenities. You can arrange them however you like. We are accustomed to barracks, one of the males said. He was tall and lean, with fewer scars than the others. Individual rooms are a luxury. Well, consider it a perk of the job. Danny looked at each of them in turn. I want to be clear about something. You are not slaves here. You are not property. You are crew members. That means you have rights. You get paid for your work. You get time off. You get to make choices about your lives. We are not used to making choices, said. The Dominion decided everything for us. What we ate, where we slept, who we fought, we have never had to think about such things. Then this will be a learning experience for all of us, Danny replied. I am not going to pretend I know what I am doing here. I have never had on my crew before, but I believe we can make this work if we are willing to try. They exchanged glances. Danny could not read their expressions, but he sensed something passing between them. A silent communication that came from years of serving together. Finally spoke, we will try, that is all we can promise. That is all I am asking for, Danny said. Now get some rest. We are leaving this station in a few hours, and there is work to do once we are. He turned to leave, but's voice stopped him. Captain Cole. Danny looked back. I told you just Danny. Danny then? Three-pupiled eyes were fixed on him with that intense focus he was starting to recognize. Why did you really buy us? You spoke of second chances and redemption, but there must be more to it than that. You are not wealthy enough to spend 70,000 credits on a philosophical experiment. It was a fair question. Danny considered his answer carefully. You are right, he admitted. There are practical reasons too. I need crew. I need people who can fight. And the truth is, there are not many humans who want to work the frontier anymore. It is too dangerous, the pay is not good enough, and there are safer jobs closer to the core systems. So we are a solution to a labor shortage. Partly, but that is not the whole story. Danny paused, trying to put his feelings into words. When you knelt in that market, when you asked for a chance to be something more than what you were, I saw something I recognized. I do not know if you understand this, but humans have been in similar positions many times in our history. We have done terrible things to each other. Wars, genocides, slavery. We have been the monsters as often as we have been the victims. And yet you survived, said. You grew beyond those things. Some of us did, not all, but enough. Danny met her gaze directly. I guess I wanted to believe that the same thing could happen for you, that the cycle of violence does not have to be eternal, that enemies can become friends, that even the worst among us can find redemption if we are given the chance. That is a very optimistic view of the universe. Maybe, but I would rather be optimistic and wrong than cynical and right. Danny smiled slightly. Besides, my grandfather used to say that the universe rewards people who take risks. Maybe this will pay off. Maybe it will not, but I would rather try and fail than never try at all. Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than before. Your grandfather sounds like he was a wise man. He was, I miss him. Danny shook off the moment of nostalgia. Anyway, get some rest. We have got a long journey ahead of us. He walked away, leaving them to settle into their new home. The next few hours were busy. Danny coordinated the departure with Station 9's traffic control. Sandra ran through the pre-flight checklist twice, muttering about burned-out sensors and calibration drift, and worked on the port stabilizers, and from the occasional shouts that echoed through the corridors, they were making progress, though not without some friction. Pete bustled around the ship, making sure everything was secure for transit, and stayed in the medical bay, running inventory and pointedly avoiding everyone. Through it all, they stayed in their quarters, emerging only when directly summoned. They were clearly trying not to be intrusive, to give the human crew space to adjust to their presence. Danny appreciated the gesture, even if it made the ship feel strangely divided. Finally, 2 hours after their return to the ship, the Resilience lifted off from Station 9 and headed into open space. Danny stood on the bridge, watching the station shrink as they pulled away. Sandra was at the pilot's console, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. Course laid in for the nebula, she reported. We have got a salvage contract waiting. Some transport got disabled by pirates a few weeks ago. The cargo is still intact, supposedly. Easy job. Sounds good, Danny said. How long until we get there? About 6 days at standard cruise speed. We could cut it to 4 if we push the engines, but would kill me. Let us not make angry. 6 days it is. Sandra nodded and engaged the hyperdrive. The stars on the stretched into long lines of light as the ship accelerated into hyperspace. A moment later, they were surrounded by the swirling colors of subspace, hurtling toward their destination at speeds that would have been unimaginable to Danny's ancestors. Danny stood there for a while, watching the patterns of light shift and flow. It was beautiful in its way. Peaceful. A reminder that the universe was vast and old and mostly indifferent to the small dramas of the beings that lived in it. He wondered what the next 6 days would bring, whether his new crew members would integrate smoothly or cause problems, whether would find a way to work alongside the people who had helped destroy everything she cared about, whether he had made the right choice. There was no way to know for certain. All he could do was move forward and see what happened. Behind him, he heard soft footsteps. He turned to find standing at the entrance to the bridge. She had changed out of the simple clothes she had been wearing at the slave market and was now dressed in a dark jumpsuit that looked like it had been designed for utility rather than appearance. It suited her. "May I enter?" she asked. "Of course, you are crew. You can go anywhere on this ship." She stepped onto the bridge, her eyes scanning the various consoles and displays with obvious interest. "Your navigation systems are more advanced than I expected. The Dominion's ships relied heavily on preset routes. This appears to allow for much more flexibility." "We do a lot of improvising in the salvage business," Danny explained. "Wrecks turn up in strange places. You have to be able to get to them quickly and navigate through debris fields and unstable areas. A rigid navigation system would not work for us." Nodded slowly. "I see, there is wisdom in adaptability." That is pretty much the human motto, Danny gestured toward the first time in hyperspace. No, but it is the first time I have been allowed to watch. On Dominion vessels, the lower castes were not permitted on the bridge during transit. We were told it was a security measure, but I suspect it was simply another way of reminding us of our place. That is stupid, Sandra said from her console. She did not turn around, but her voice carried clearly. How are soldiers supposed to learn about ship operations if they are not allowed to see them? We were not meant to learn, replied. We were meant to fight and die, nothing more. Sandra made a disgusted sound. Well, that is a waste of resources if I ever heard one. No wonder they lost the war. Danny caught eye and saw a flicker of surprise there. Sandra had not exactly welcomed her, but she was treating her like a colleague, like an equal. After months of being treated as property, even that small amount of respect must have felt significant. The first 3 weeks of the journey were tense. Danny had expected as much, and he did his best to facilitate interactions between the human crew and without forcing anyone into uncomfortable situations. They kept to themselves for the most part. They ate separately from the humans, taking their meals in their quarters rather than in the common mess hall. They slept in rotating shifts, never leaving themselves completely unguarded even though they were among allies. When they were not working, they practiced combat forms in the cargo bay, their movements so fast and precise that watching them was almost hypnotic. Danny assigned them to various duties around the ship: security rotations, cargo handling, maintenance tasks. They performed every assignment flawlessly, never complaining, never questioning, never showing any emotion beyond focused competence. It was impressive, but it was also a little unsettling. They were too perfect, too controlled, like machines wearing the faces of living beings. The breakthrough came during the salvage run in the nebula. The target was a transport ship called the Meridian Star, which Danny found grimly ironic given the circumstances. It had been disabled by pirates 3 weeks earlier, its crew captured or killed. The cargo, several containers of rare minerals worth a small fortune, had been left behind because the pirates had not had the equipment to retrieve it. The job should have been simple: fly in, attach towing cables, haul the cargo back to civilization. Easy money. But when the Resilience dropped out of hyperspace near the disabled transport, they found they were not alone. Contact, Sandra said sharply, her hands flying across her console. Multiple contacts, 4 ships emerging from the nebula's interference clouds. They are powering weapons. Pirates, Danny said. It was not a question. Looks like it. They must have been waiting for someone to come pick up the cargo. Smart. Damn, Danny thought quickly. Can we run? Maybe, but they are between us and the jump point. We would have to go through them or around them, and either way, they are going to get some shots off. The communication system crackled. An alien voice filled the bridge, translated into rough English by the ship's computer. Attention, salvage vessel. This cargo belongs to us now. Turn around and leave, and we will let you go. Stay, and we will destroy you. Danny looked at Sandra. What do you think? I think we are 4-1, she replied grimly. But if we run, we lose the contract and probably get shot up in the process. These are not the kind of pirates who let witnesses go. So we fight. I do not see another option, unless you have got a brilliant plan hidden somewhere. Danny did not have a brilliant plan. He had a salvage ship with 4 gun emplacements and a crew of 11, facing off against 4 armed vessels crewed by people who made their living through violence. Then he heard a voice behind him. Permission to direct defensive operations. He turned to find standing at the bridge entrance, her posture rigid and alert. Her 3-pupiled eyes were fixed on analyzing the situation with the cool assessment of a professional soldier. Danny hesitated for exactly 1 second. Then he made a decision that would change everything. Granted, he said. Did not waste time with acknowledgement. She strode onto the bridge, her voice immediately taking on the clipped tones of military command. Helm, bring us about 30 degrees to port. Present our starboard side to the enemy formation. Weapons, stand by to fire on my mark. Sandra looked at Danny with raised eyebrows, but she followed the order. The Resilience swung around, presenting its more heavily armored side to the approaching pirates. Communications, open a channel to our crew. Did not wait for confirmation. All hands, this is battle stations. A report to weapons control immediately. Prepare for boarding defense. Move. Through the ship's internal speakers, Danny heard the sounds of rapid movement as they responded to her commands. They are not going to just sit there, Sandra warned. Those ships are maneuvering to surround us. Let them try. His eyes were moving rapidly, tracking multiple streams of data on the bridge's displays. The lead ship is a raider, light armor, heavy forward weapons. It relies on intimidation and head-on assaults. The two flanking vessels are converted cargo haulers, slow and poorly armored. The fourth ship is hanging back, probably the commander. How can you tell all that from here? Pete asked. He had appeared on the bridge at some point, his face pale with fear but his voice steady. I was trained to analyze enemy forces, replied. They are not sophisticated tacticians. They rely on numerical superiority and the element of surprise. They expect their prey to run or surrender. They do not expect organized resistance. And if they get it? Showed her teeth in what Danny now recognized as a predatory smile. Then we make them pay for every meter of space they try to take. The pirate ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through the darkness of space, striking the Resilience's shields in bursts of brilliant light. The ship shuddered under the impact. Shields holding at 80%, reported over the comm. But they will not take much more of this. Then we do not let them hit us much more, turned to Sandra. Helm, I need you to trust me. Can you execute complex maneuvers on my command without hesitation? Sandra's jaw tightened. I can fly anything anywhere, just tell me what you need. Good, on my mark, full power dive, 45 degrees negative. Then roll 90 degrees starboard and boost engines to maximum. Ready. Ready. Weapons target the lead ship's engine section. Fire on my command. Waited, watching the pirate formation with unblinking intensity. The seconds stretched out like hours. Then mark. The Resilience dove. Sandra's hands moved across the controls with incredible speed, pushing the ship into a maneuver that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. The pirate weapons, which had been targeting their previous position, cut through empty space. Roll boost. The ship spun and accelerated, coming up behind the lead pirate ship before it could react. Danny was thrown against his seat restraints as the G-forces overwhelmed the inertial dampeners. Fire. The Resilience's weapons blazed. 4 concentrated beams of energy struck the pirate ship's engine section simultaneously. The shields flickered and died. Metal melted. The engines exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations. Target disabled, Pete reported, his voice shaking with adrenaline. The other ships are breaking formation. They did not expect that, said with satisfaction. Helm, bring us around, target the nearest flanking vessel, same approach. The battle continued for another 11 minutes. Under direction, the Resilience moved like a completely different ship. Sandra executed maneuvers she had never attempted before, trusting his commands even when they seemed counterintuitive. The at-the-weapons controls fired with timing and precision that no human could have matched. By the end, 2 pirate ships were disabled. One was destroyed, and the fourth was fleeing into the nebula at maximum speed. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of overstressed systems cooling down. Damage report, Danny said. His voice came out hoarse. Minor hull scoring on the port side, reported over the comm. Nothing structural. Shield emitters are fried. They need before we do anything else, but overall we got lucky. We got real lucky. Danny turned too. She stood at parade rest near the navigation console, waiting for further orders. That was impressive, Danny said. We were bred for combat, she replied. This was a minor engagement. The pirates were undisciplined and poorly equipped. A true military force would have presented greater challenges. Still, you saved us, thank you. Something flickered across features. A softening, perhaps. A brief glimpse of the person beneath the warrior facade. You are welcome, Danny. It was the first time she had used his name since they had left the slave market. Danny smiled. It felt like a victory bigger than the battle they had just won. After that day, everything began to change. The barriers between the human crew and the started to break down. It happened slowly, through shared experiences and small moments of connection. It started with meals. A few days after the battle, appeared in the common mess hall at dinner time, carrying a tray of food. She sat down at an empty table alone and began to eat in the careful, controlled way that did everything. The human crew watched her for a moment. Then, of all people, picked up his tray and walked over to her table. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Looked surprised. "No, please." Sat down across from her. "I have got to say, that thing you did with the engine targeting during the fight, that was something else. I did not think our weapons could even be calibrated for that kind of precision." "It is a matter of understanding the energy flow patterns," explained. "Once you know how a shield generator distributes power, you can identify the weak points in the coverage. The rest is simple timing." "Simple," she says, shook his head. "I have been working on ships for 30 years, and I never would have thought of that." From there, the conversation wandered into technical territory that Danny could barely follow. But the important thing was that it happened at all, and talking like colleagues, like equals. Over the next few weeks, similar scenes played out throughout the ship. Pete discovered that a young warrior named, shared his interest in old entertainment broadcasts from various alien cultures. They started watching programs together, debating the merits of different storytelling traditions. Sandra found that the who handled most of the maintenance work had an intuitive understanding of ship systems that complemented her own skills. They began working together on upgrades to the navigation array. Even began to thaw, though it took longer for her than for the others. The turning point came when one of them suffered an injury during a training exercise. A blade had slipped, cutting deep into his forearm. Healed quickly, but the wound still needed treatment. Went to the medical bay, where was on duty. Danny happened to be nearby and heard the exchange through the open door. "Sit," said flatly. Sat on the examination table, holding his injured arm out for her inspection. His face showed no pain, though the wound was clearly serious. Cleaned the injury in silence, her movements efficient and professional. She applied a healing compound and began wrapping the arm in bandages. "You do not have to treat me kindly," said suddenly. "I know who we are, I know what we have done." His hands paused for just a moment, then she continued her work. "I am a medic, I treat injured people, that is my job. But we are not just people to you. We are the enemy. We are the ones who." "I know what you are." His voice was sharp. "I do not need you to remind me. I think about it every day. I see the faces of the dead every time I close my eyes." She tied off the bandage with a firm tug. "But I also know that holding onto hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. My anger will not bring back the people we lost. It will not change the past. It will just keep eating at me until there is nothing left." Was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You are stronger than I would be in your position." "I am not strong. I am just tired of being angry." Stepped back from the examination table. "Your arm will be healed in a few days. Try not to injure yourself again." "Thank you." Did not respond. But as left the medical bay, Danny saw something change in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. As the weeks turned into months, the resilience became something new. Not just a human ship with alien crew members, but a genuine mixed crew, each person contributing their unique skills and perspectives. They taught the humans about tactical thinking and combat discipline. The humans taught the about flexibility, improvisation, and the value of questioning authority. Danny learned more about culture than he had ever expected. He discovered that they were not simply warriors. Before the Dominion had turned them into weapons, they had been poets, philosophers, and artists. Their creative traditions had been suppressed for generations, but they had never been completely destroyed. One evening, Danny found alone in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. She was speaking softly in her own language, the words flowing with a rhythm that sounded almost musical. "What are you doing?" Danny asked. turned, looking slightly embarrassed, though the expression was subtle on her alien features. An old habit. Before the Dominion forbade such things, I used to compose verses about the beauty of stellar phenomena, the movement of light through space, the dance of gravity and matter. It was considered inappropriate for the warrior caste, but I never stopped. That sounds like poetry. I suppose it is, a warrior who writes poetry. She made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. The Dominion would have called it weakness, a distraction from my true purpose. And what do you call it? Was quiet for a moment. I call it the only thing that ever made me feel like more than a weapon. When I watched the stars and found words to describe their beauty, I felt connected to something larger than myself, something that had nothing to do with killing and conquest. Danny sat down beside her, looking out at the star field. I do not think that is weakness. I think it is the most human thing I have ever heard her say. Human. Humans create art even in the worst circumstances, especially in the worst circumstances. It is how we make sense of the universe, how we find meaning in chaos. He glanced at her. Maybe humans are not so different after all. Perhaps not, turned back to the stars. Perhaps that is why you were the one who gave us a chance. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the universe drift past. The true test of the crew's integration came 6 months after Danny's purchase at the slave market. A distress call reached them from a human colony on Vega III. An unknown hostile force was attacking the settlement. The local patrol was days away. The Resilience was the closest ship with any combat capability. Danny did not hesitate. Sandra set course for Vega III, maximum burn. That is a combat zone, Sandra pointed out. We are a salvage ship. We have got 4 gun emplacements and a crew of 12. What are we supposed to do against an invasion force? We are supposed to help, Danny said simply. Those are human civilians down there, including families, children. Sandra looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded and began entering the coordinates. Appeared on the bridge moments later. I have reviewed the tactical data from the distress signal, she reported. The attacking force appears to be raiders, likely the same group that has been harassing independent ships in this sector. They have 8 ships and approximately 200 ground troops. We cannot fight 8 ships, Pete said nervously. No, agreed, but we do not need to defeat them. We only need to convince them that the fight is not worth the cost. She turned to Danny. Captain, with your permission, I would like to propose a strategy. Danny felt the weight of the moment. This was it, the test he had been waiting for, the chance to see if his faith in the had been justified. Go ahead, he said. Laid out her plan. It was audacious, risky, and relied heavily on this tendency to avoid serious resistance. If it worked, they might be able to drive off the raiders with minimal casualties. If it failed. Danny did not let himself think about that. Let us do it, he said. Full burn to Vega III. The situation on the colony was worse than the initial reports had suggested. The had overwhelmed the local militia in the first assault. Survivors had barricaded themselves in the central habitation dome, but they would not hold out much longer. The Resilience emerged from hyperspace broadcasting on all frequencies. Danny's voice carried across the system, amplified by the ship's powerful communications array. Raiders, this is the Terran vessel Resilience. You are attacking a protected colony in violation of Galactic Convention. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response was derisive laughter. Danny had expected as much. He gave a nod. What followed was a battle that would become legendary in the frontier sectors. Under tactical direction, the Resilience engaged the fleet with a ferocity that belied its origins as a simple salvage ship. They manned the weapons with deadly efficiency, their enhanced reflexes and battle instincts turning every shot into a precision strike. Sandra flew like she had been born for combat, threading the ship through fields of debris and enemy fire with maneuvers that should have been impossible. The fight lasted 4 hours. When it was over, 3 ships were destroyed, 2 were disabled, and the remaining 3 were fleeing at maximum speed. The Resilience was battered but intact. The colony was saved. The survivors emerged from their bunker to find a human salvage captain and 7 warriors standing among the wreckage of their attackers. Many of the colonists had lost family in the war. Many had fought against the Dominion themselves. An old woman approached directly. Her face was weathered by years of frontier life, and her eyes held the weight of old sorrows. "My son died at Meridian," she said quietly. Met her gaze without flinching. "I am sorry. Nothing I can say will undo what was done, but I am no longer the weapon of those who ordered such atrocities. I am trying to build something different." The old woman studied her for a long moment. Then slowly she extended her hand. "Thank you for saving my..." Took the offered hand. Her voice, when she spoke, was rough with emotion she was clearly struggling to control. "It was my honors." Standing nearby, Danny felt something shift in his chest. This was what he had hoped for. This was why he had taken the risk. Not for practical benefits or military advantage, but for this moment. For the possibility of healing. For the chance that enemies could become something else. Word of the Battle of Vega III spread quickly. A salvage ship crewed by humans and had stood against overwhelming odds to protect a colony from raiders. The story captured something essential about the human spirit, and the media ran with it. Danny found himself fielding calls from news networks, military officials, and corporate interests. He declined most of them. But one message came from the Terran Confederation's Office of Veteran Integration that he could not ignore. "We have been tracking the situation with displaced populations," the official explained. "Most have ended up in terrible circumstances. Your crew represents an alternative model, one we would like to study and potentially replicate." "We are not a model," Danny said. "We are just people trying to make things work." "Perhaps, but what you have achieved matters. They were our enemies. Now some of them are becoming our allies. That gives us hope for other species, other conflicts, other futures." Danny thought about the journey that had brought them here. The tension and mistrust of those first weeks. The slow building of understanding. The battle that had forged them into something stronger than any of them had expected. "Talk to," he said finally. "She is the one who made this possible. She is the one who had the courage to kneel before a human and ask for a chance at redemption." A year after the Battle of Vega III, the Resilience had grown into something its original designer never imagined. The crew had expanded to include more refugees, each carefully vetted and integrated into the ship's culture. They had also taken on humans who wanted to be part of something different, something that represented the best of what cooperation between species could achieve. The ship's reputation attracted unusual contracts. Diplomatic missions where a mixed crew could serve as proof of reconciliation. Security operations that required both combat capability and cultural sensitivity. Humanitarian work in the spaces between civilizations. One evening, Danny stood on the observation deck, watching the stars stream past during hyperspace transit. Joined him, as she often did during quiet moments. "I have been thinking about what you asked me a year ago," she said, "about why I knelt in that slave market. And at the time, I told myself it was strategic, the optimal choice for survival." She paused. "But that was not entirely true. When I saw you, I saw something I had never encountered. Uncertainty." Danny raised an eyebrow. "Uncertainty." The Dominion's rulers were always certain. Certain of their superiority, their purpose. That certainty made them incapable of change. She looked at him. "You seemed like someone still figuring things out, still questioning. I thought perhaps we could figure things out together." Danny smiled. "And have we?" "We have made a start. In my experience, starting is always the hardest part." They stood together in silence. Behind them, the sounds of the ship carried on. Sandra arguing with navigation, humming while working on engines, and Pete debating medical techniques, the practicing combat forms in the cargo bay. A family, Danny thought, imperfect and improbable but real. The universe was vast and cold and indifferent to the hopes of any species. But in this small ship, traveling through the endless dark, something warm had taken root. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all. Years later, historians would point to the Resilience as a turning point. The ship became a symbol of what was possible when former enemies chose to build rather than destroy. Eventually became an advisor to the Terran Confederation on affairs, helping establish integration programs across the frontier. Danny continued to captain the Resilience until retirement, after which the ship was preserved as a museum dedicated to cooperation. But those who knew them understood that the real legacy was simpler. It was the moment when a warrior chose to kneel and ask for redemption, and a human chose to offer it. In a galaxy that had known too much war, that single act of trust changed everything.